Hi everyone, Elizabeth here. So hope you're well and healthy, and thanks for joining me as I just share a little bit of a personal experience on why I've chosen a 100% med-free life. There's going to be logical and spiritual perspectives on this. I'm going to tell you about my experiences that I've encountered with pharmaceuticals and things in between probably the ages of like 17 and 19, and why those experiences I've chosen to dedicate a life to not consuming any sort of med or pharmaceutical. I'm also going to read just a brief little excerpt from my book on the part where I talked about antidepressants and just really understand that point in time. From a spiritual sense, I do believe that every era or generation is incarnating a certain type of soul. I was born in 1985, and I do believe that millennials have been born as a more sensitive type of soul, and we're seeing that now even with my generation having children, that there is just a little bit more sensitivity. Some of it has been socially engineered, that we've been broken down to become weak. However, if we do want to transition into a more kind society, you do have to have a little bit more empathy and sensitivity in your system. So I do believe that I was naturally born in a way of living through 100% divine law, of being encompassed in the natural ways of living, let me put it that way, through the means of holistic health, resolving issues and trauma, getting free from medications because of eating a healing, detoxifying type of diet. Obviously, my career has been in human movement and exercise science, of teaching people on how to eat healthier, but also live healthier and move. For some people, the first step to changing is just hiring a personal trainer and just building up self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-efficacy, because they can actually do things in the gym that they did not think was once possible. So, to give a little bit of context as well, I was also raised this way. So in one way, I do believe I was born this way, to live through natural law, through the laws of nature. The second way was that was very much influenced because of my upbringing. I was raised by parents every summer, grew a massive garden of food, obviously the produce, fruits and vegetables. They had probably 150 little flowers that they would plant all around the house. So I was raised in a very earthly way, and my father read a lot of kind of holistic alternative health newsletters. I believe that a big part of his awakening as a parent was because of Dr. Mercola, and he swapped us from regular milk to organic milk. He swapped us in like 1992 from Skippy peanut butter to the organic ground peanut butter. Every child loves junk food, but there was still control from the parent within the household. I was only allowed to drink soda pop when we would go out to a restaurant on a Saturday night. I was allowed one boxed sugary cereal a month. Everything else had to been at least pretty much plain. Like every child in America is probably raised on cereal, so it had to be plain, like Chex or something along those lines. So because of the way that I was born, and I also, at like the age of 8, after going to birthday parties at McDonald's, I knew, because we didn't eat McDonald's because it was bad for you, there was just something about the whole business practice and everything about McDonald's that just didn't mesh well with me. It didn't resonate. And I remember talking to my mom about meat, and I just thought like this whole thing was bleh, like McDonald's and all Burger Kings, all that stuff was shit. Although I liked, like Arby's curly fries. I mean, what 10-year-old kid didn't like that junky stuff? But all of this had a foundational impact on how I would become as an adult. You either follow the things that you have been taught, or you rebel and you go against it. You do go the opposite way. So let's just fast forward to the point of this video. When I was 17, I had a group of friends in high school that started taking pills that shortened your period. Now, I was a little bit of a later bloomer than most girls in that department. And, anybody No one says like, I get so excited for that time of the month. No one ever says that. I've never heard one woman speak that. But I, of course, through the ignorance of being very young and wanting to defy natural law or the ways that we live as a woman, these pills were meant to reduce and shorten your cycle. So for example, if you get an average of a 5 to 7 day bleeding period, this pill would knock it down to like 3 to 5 days or 3 to 4 days. So, excuse me, sometimes as short as 2. I asked my parents, they said no. I bought them from my friend, and I snuck them, and the pill did the exact opposite. I no longer bled for 3 to 5 days a month. I was bleeding for about 23 to 25 days a month, and I had about 3 to 5 days off. That happened for months and months at a time. It got so bad to where I was sleeping in almost every single class in high school, and I got sent down to the nurse's office, and they asked me, you know, how was my family life? Am I getting treated fine by my parents? Are they feeding me? And I'm like, yeah. I'm just bleeding. And after all of these tests and understanding, I was just losing so much iron. I had virtually no energy, and I was raised as an athlete. So this obviously did affect some form of athletic performance. Now, because I suffered from really bad back pain at the age of 13, my father sent me to physical therapy as well as to acupuncture at the age of 16. So that had some foundational teachings within the world of alternative and natural health. Because he was so against any form of surgery, he healed his torn rotator cuff in 2 years. It did take 2 years, but he did physical therapy and did like things like prolotherapy to help reattach the ligaments and the tendons when every single Western medicine doctor told him to get the surgery. So the acupuncture did help a little bit with the menstrual cycle issues, but then fast forwarding about a year or so later, I'm in transition to move from high school to college. So as an 18-year-old, I go to the doctor, and they are just like, well, now is the time to start thinking about birth control. And I was like, well, I kind of don't really want to think about it, but fine. I mean, I didn't really have a plan to just start having rampant sex with a bunch of people, because in health education, they told you to wrap it up. So I decided to try the birth control, and they prescribed Yaz. It's also known as Yasmin. And I'm going to read about this in a moment when I'm done sharing my story. But Yaz did the opposite effect from me. I was told by the doctor that it would reduce my periods, it would reduce the cramping, it would reduce all of these things that I had problems with, which was like the chronic bleeding, the pain, the cramping, the PMS. It did the fucking opposite. Once again, it was the inversion of what it did. I was psychotic. I was out of my mind. I would eat dinner, and then an hour later, I was eating bagel sandwiches at like 8, 9 at night. I had outrageous hunger control. I had outrageous hormonal control. I was already in pain with my period, and then it made it 50 times worse. I got off of it. And then, of course, I went back, and they assured me just try and try again. So I did. I tried Yaz or Yasmin again, and it did the exact same thing. And I said, screw this, and then I threw the crap out. Now, if you're not familiar with what Yaz or Yasmin is, I do believe it started off in 2001. And so through my experience, this was 2003. Not so... it would, let's just say 2 years with it being on the market. That's probably relatively new. So it was a Bayer birth control pill. It was kind of a generic version, and it was known for having drospironin. I don't even know if I can say that right. It's a type of synthetic progesterone hormone used in many birth control pills. It was found in many oral contraceptives, including Yaz, Yasmin, Cyphal, and Bayez, as well as the generic brands that I don't need to go into. So pretty much what happened with this pill, I think it was taken off the market 3 times, but over 50 women, one report says over 50 women, another report said 55 women actually died from these pills, and guess why? Blood clots. Absolutely insane when you're thinking about what the hell is happening right now in the world of shot, that blood clots are such a big issue. They were known as one of the most common blood clot related oral contraceptives. So that's why Yaz and Yasmin was really considered, I guess, bad. There were some offside labels. Now, I did read another report that said they took it off the market and then they pretty much just put it back on through another different name. So, of course, the same shit through the FDA. I was trying to scan through this little research article. It's so long, I can't remember. Let me see. Okay, yeah, here we go. In addition to reviewing the 6 studies, the FDA funded its own large study to further evaluate the relative safety of drospirenone in oral contraceptives. The FDA study reviewed medical records of 800,000 women taking birth control between 2001 and 2007 and reported that women taking birth control pills containing drospirenone were significantly more likely to have blood clots. Drospirenone increases the risk of blood clots from 6 to 10,000 women. From 6 in 10,000 women to 10 in 10,000 women, or basically it's 1 per 1,000 people. The risk of blood clots associated with Yasmin, and other pills with drospirenone were significantly higher than any other type of birth control pills among women over 35. However, the FDA study also warned that they focused only on women taking birth control pills for the first time. And so that type of drug that was in it increased the risk of blood clots and heart attacks, especially for women under 35. Unbelievable. So moving on to college, I get a flu shot because that's what the doctors told me, and I didn't want to do it. And guess what? It fucked me up. I had adverse effects. I was sick for 2 weeks. I was vomiting and diarrheaing water at one point because I was basically had the flu for 2 weeks. And then I started having breathing issues. The breathing issues were then consulted by the doctors that told me I had athletic induced asthma. I was raised as an athlete. I never had a problem in my entire life. I was doing sports since the age of 5 years old. Tennis, softball, basketball. I was running up and down courts almost every single day of my childhood, and I never had a breathing problem. Now, maybe part of drinking in college didn't necessarily help that experience at all. However, there was such a disconnect that at the time I didn't really know or think about this, but I was completely fine at one point in my life, and then the next day I wasn't. Moving on to going into India, I was prescribed 2 things. One was antidepressants, which at the end I will read just the excerpt so you can kind of get the emotional side of what happened. So that was Zoloft, which I think that shit has had other, stuff going on with it of side effects and things like that. But because I was so stressed out and I didn't really quite understand what was happening, I was losing so much hair and I became an insomniac. So all of these things were so taxing on my system that at the time of being 20 years old, I did not really quite get what was going on. So I found a scholarship from my university that said, what could you do if you could do anything? And it's kind of funny, I'm actually wearing my Bowling Green shirt today because I played rugby in college. I was not an athletic induced asthmatic person. And I wrote the scholarship because I was suffering through that time of a lot of things and reverse culture shock from living in Australia. I wrote the proposal to study yoga in India because I started getting into athletics. I was studying athletics. I was studying sport management, but I wanted to, because of living in Australia, I thought, you know what, maybe I should go more into group fitness and things like personal training, human movement, because I started to see the corruption in the sports world, which will be a separate video in itself. So I will read in a moment on my experience with antidepressants, on why I briefly took it and then I decided to throw it out. But I want to talk to you about the malaria pills. Now, when I went to India, I got from the campus abroad office, I got a letter that was written by the CDC that said I had to get these type of shots and vaccinations in order to go to India. And at the time I was like, oh fuck, I was like, but fine, okay. And then they said malaria pills, and I thought, after the birth control thing, I did not want to do it at all. Like, I did not want to be out of my gourd. And I talked to the doctor, and they're like, well, there's 2 types of malaria pills. There's a generic one, and then there's this one. So I think like the mainstream brand, there's one brand that kind of makes you a little hallucinogenic, and that's the brand that I got, because apparently the side effects were less. In India, I started getting hallucinogenic, demonic dreams that freaked me out in my sleep state, to the point where it affected me in my waking state. I was like, I couldn't even imagine that reality because of everything that I saw in those dreams. It was just so dark and evil and demonic and messed up. I threw the malaria pills out. I just said, screw this. I will take my chances with malaria. So every single time I have tried to take an FDA approved drug, it has done the exact opposite. It has made me unhealthy. It made me mentally unstable. It made me worse. And after all of those experiences as being a young female and in college, I made a vow to myself to live a 100% med-free life, because none of this worked. I didn't need birth control because I didn't have plans to go start sleeping with 1,600 guys. In fact, going to college and seeing a poster in the student union when it said if you've slept with 7 people, you actually, when you did the calculations, if you slept with 7 people and all of them slept with 7 people, you actually slept with 1 million people. And then when you start learning about sex on a deeper level through spirituality, you start to learn about things like the soul ties and the soul bonds and picking up people's auras. It's an absolute disgusting mess. So instead of teaching prevention, like how to be a responsible person, we've just taught a completely irresponsible, dysfunctional society where you see Hollywood movies where people go to college and they have these epic parties and men put their, private parts in apple pies and everyone's fucking everybody. And that's the type of dysfunction that has been taught. And now that we see the truth starting to come out a little bit more in today's society, we understand why dysfunction has been bred. Because being functional does not create money and wealth for things like the pharmaceutical companies and the FDA. I'm going to talk about the antidepressant part from my book. So basically, I was an insomniac. I was stressed out. I didn't know what was going on. I had no support system. I didn't fit in anywhere. And I basically had a mental breakdown in my bathroom in the middle of the night. So in this moment of having a mental breakdown, I realized my future did not look grand but small. As life drove forward, I kept my eye in the rearview mirror instead of focusing forward on the windshield. I became stuck and fixated on the past and confused about my future. I just wanted to go back to Australia. Back in the bathroom, my physical body finally stopped waving back and forth as these thoughts were processed. Exhausted, tired, and confused, I knew I had 2 choices: to do something to fix myself or continue living the way I am. Life is a continuum of choices, and I needed to get out of this neurotic mental insomniac state. I grabbed a towel and cleaned my puddle of tears. I looked in the mirror with bloodshot and swollen eyes and a face red from anxiety. My perfect skin somehow developed bumps along my cheek. I did not recognize the person I saw in the mirror. Semi-calmed and thirsty, I went into the kitchen to drink a glass of water. Wearing nothing but a t-shirt and underwear, I sat in the chair and tucked my knees under the shirt to stay warm. I rested my head on my knees while I hugged the glass of water. The glass of water calmed me, and I placed the empty glass on the table. I glanced upward and I noticed the small tapestry I bought in Fiji that was pinned on the wall. Adjacent to the tapestry was the large wooden turtle that I also bought from the locals in Fiji. Untucking my legs from the shirt, I stood up and placed my hand on the turtle. I flashed back to images of sitting alone on the beach with my surfboard that had a turtle insignia on it next to me. The memories flooded my mind. I took this as a sign to slow down and reassured my decision to do something about my situation. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with the campus doctor to ask about my hair disease. I brought a notebook with questions that I wanted to ask the doctor. Of course, my appointment lasted only 15 minutes. In a rush, he handed me a script and said, "Here, this will help." Confused and with none of my questions answered, I glanced to see that I was holding a prescription for the antidepressant Zoloft. "If you need a refill, let us know," he said. As I walked out, I rolled my eyes and thought, this is it? I knew I was not depressed, but I could not figure out my ailments. I held the prescription in my hand, ready to shred it for the trash, but I decided to fill the prescription. I was not exactly the biggest fan of Western medicine for preventative well-being. My parents begged me religiously not to take antidepressants. I did not want to consume meds because my delicate system never responded well with traditional medicine, which is everything that I just explained to you in this video. I did not even use ibuprofen unless it was absolutely necessary. I tried birth control pills once for a week and it made me a raging hormonal psycho. I wanted to eat everything and punch everyone. To say the least, Western medicine and I did not mesh well together. Several desperate weeks later, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the bottle of pills. I read the Zoloft directions and it mentioned taking 1/2 a pill for the first week to get acclimated to the medication. With no one knowing, I chopped a pill and took my first dose. I continued doing this for 4 days. Whether it was a placebo effect or it was actually working, because my system is sensitive, my mood elevated and I stopped caring about deadlines and responsibilities. I started to float outside of the deep, dark cave. Throughout the last couple weeks, I heard horror stories from my peers about being on antidepressants and how it led to suicidal thoughts or doctors not refilling prescriptions, and the drastic cutoff led to additional health concerns. One friend told me that her doctor did not refill her prescription twice in a row, and the drastic cutoff caused bleeding out of her ears and nose. She informed me that I would not feel the side effects of these pills and that it will take some time to kick in. However, I knew my body's sensitivity to stimulants and I felt the effects from the pill. My mother also worked in a hospital where she saw many college-aged individuals attempt suicide because of dosage issues and or cutoffs from the meds. In general, chemicals scared me. The pill commercials, which stated 21 plus side effects, sounded miserable and were another subliminal bullshit message to show people living a fake, uplifting life. But the word side effects was enough to make me want to avoid pills in general. Stroke, heart attack, bleeding rectum, even death. What kind of life was that? And what the hell are you supposed to do if your rectum starts bleeding in public? Just enjoy life nonchalantly with a carefree attitude? If my asshole bled in public, my first thoughts would be embarrassment and suicide. Staying calm did not sound possible with a bleeding rectum side effect. I could only imagine what I would say if this ever happened. Pardon me from the dinner table. I suspect my rectum is bleeding from my pills and I must use the bathroom. I apologize for the inconvenience, but you know, it's those silly pills and those unpredictable side effects. And to top off the embarrassment, circumstances like this obviously would only happen while you're wearing white pants because somehow life is interconnected at the least opportune times. Every time I saw the word drug, I thought down under the rug, as if the pill swept all the garbage under the rug without processing life's issues. And while living down under, where music, the sun, the sand, and the sea were my drugs of choice, one sober night in Australia in a dance club, it was nearly 3 a.m. and I walked out of the bathroom stall to wash my hands. I was sober, by the way. The girl next to me at the bathroom sink stared in the mirror and popped a pill of ecstasy, the drug for most foreigners in a nightclub. As she went to fix her hair, her body collapsed on the ground and then started to have seizures on the bathroom floor. Women entered and exited the bathroom in their own self-absorbed self-absorbed, mind-altered state and just stepped over her body as if she was roadkill. Sober, I held her shoulders and asked, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I opened her eyelids and noticed that her eyes rolled in the back of her head. I ran out into the bathroom to help call security. It opened my eyes that chemicals were something I never wanted to ingest, no matter how tempting the experience seemed. For me, drugs were like risk management. There was a 50-50 chance that something would go right or something would go wrong. After that experience, I persistently questioned, are chemicals just an excuse to mask or escape some form of happiness that we as individuals need to resolve? On day 4, I took another half cut of the Zoloft, which left me feeling semi-elated. I walked outside to enjoy the weather. The atmosphere and my body felt serene, as if time stopped and there was no such thing as duties, homework, deadlines, and working 3 jobs while in college. With the breath of fresh air, I realized these tasks, deadlines, do exist. And this elated feeling would only mask my true feelings for so long. I realized that if a pill could make me happy, so could my mind. On day 5, I grabbed the pills, I dumped them into the toilet, I'm so sorry, Earth, and watched the pills spiral into the earth as I watched the beer dump down the drains in the Australian bathrooms. Basically, when I studied abroad in Australia at the age of 20, I chose to stop drinking. So that was a spiritual experience where everybody was in progress to drinking more because they were turning 21. I was going the opposite way to stop drinking. In my situation, I found the antidepressant pill as this facade to disguise emotions that I needed to process. It was as if the pill was the broom and swept all those feelings, thoughts, emotions under the rug and kept them there to accumulate more dirt and crud, which would eventually accrue a higher dosage or dependency. To me, it was a cop-out. I knew I needed to find real help. I'm the type of individual who needs to be hand-on or experiential, or listening to various opinions to resolve issues. The following day, I went to the Saddlemeyer building and to the floor where nobody wants to be seen, the counseling floor. Like the girl in the dragon tattoo, I covered my face with a baggy hood and sunglasses. I kept my head down. I stared at the floors as I walked to the campus building. As a campus tour guide and a sports club athlete, I knew and recognized many people. I became embarrassed and did everything that I could to hide my identity. I met with an advisor. She was in school for a PhD in psychology. She listened to my story and proclaimed that I could benefit from a stress management group. Stress? I don't have stress. I have hair disease. I'm losing my hair. Why won't anyone listen to me? I thought. My family also mentioned that I became ill from stress. To me, this was ludicrous because being young, I was supposed to have enough energy and the ability to multitask various issues and responsibilities. I denied every claim that I became ill and lost hair just because of stress. I was sure that my anxiety, stomach problems, and hair loss was a disease. I took a moment to contemplate whether I should proceed with this Western mind training. Part of my little vegan, holistic nature wanted to avoid anything Western, as I feared pills would be shoved down my throat again, or I'd be diagnosed with some mental disorder. But the other part of me had a curiosity to explore a different method. In my mental desperation and partly out of curiosity, I finally relented to the stress management group to understand how stress and hair disease were related. I desired answers because I was not my normal self. People who knew me would not have known I was a mental basket case, but internally I was drowning in sorrow, fear, and utter confusion. No longer was I staring at the celestial sky painting of what I saw at the nighttime in Australia, but now I was looking at a canvas painted of a black canvas painted black with the god-awful signs of Walmart. So this is a very long video, and I thank you for listening to this, but I just want to say that in the world of what we know now in 2021, obviously what I learned in 2003, all of these things were stepping stones for me to build a healthier life. But what we see with Big Pharma and Monsanto and all these companies is that it really is the inversion. And I've done videos in the past that talks about evil is the inversion of the word live or live. None of this. I was not alive in my body anytime I took any of that stuff. Can you imagine what the hell they're doing today? Because they cloned fucking sheeps and cows in 1996 while all of us were, you know, staring at fun little Billy Idol videos and crap in the 90s, you know, shopping our asses off. No one knew what was going on. Now we're in a stage of life that's a hell of a lot scarier because the medical industry and the government, they're always about 3 generations ahead. If anybody has listened to Robert Malone, one of the inventors of mRNA, he was doing this crap like 30 years ago. Can you imagine that? Back in like 1986 or 1992, hearing about something called mRNA? Like, what? No one would have known. So in my way of living, I feel I have been freed. I have been freed from the chains that have been inside of this head, or the skeletons, whatever, from any of the crap that happened to me. All of us have some form of shit to get through in this life. And I've been free from a really limited self-belief system. Lies and manipulation to show you that you can live this great life as a 75-year-old picking up your little granddaughter because of taking this pill. I cannot believe people believe that stuff. Maybe I was born with higher awareness, especially with making conscious decisions about McDonald's at the age of 8. Being born into a family that was not perfect, but still ingrained a bunch of holistic living and just how to eat to reverse all that genetic crap from our ancestors of diabetes and heart disease, that by eating solid, nutritious food was the way, especially by planting food in your raising food from your own garden. It broke away from all of that, and it took stepping into it to break away from it. And when you start to see things today, I'll talk about this in another video. My book never flourished. It's because it promoted function. And in a dysfunctional society, they only want to promote dysfunction. So that's part of this breaking out of the matrix. It's becoming free within yourself, independent within yourself and in your health, that you can do this. I just don't think to get back to normal, it does not take more death to beat death. Nature has never asked you for money. If we were all healthy, there would be no need for Monsanto or the FDA. There'd be no need for chemotherapy. How we all don't have cancer today is a true testament to how resilient the human body is and how much of a self-regenerating being that it is. Because if you live in a city, we're inhaling chemicals and toxicity all day, and now we have 5G wires or poles like right outside of our apartments. That stuff never existed a few years ago. So this is why I've chosen a med-free life. And it's made me very happy. And I want to choose to continue to live that life, because the life of choosing the other stuff made me insane. And that's exactly what dysfunctional people want. They want you to become dysfunctional. They want you to become the zombie that's addicted. I work at senior homes and I see people getting 12 fucking pills a day, and then their skin is breaking out in rashes and they cannot figure out why. And no one will listen to me. I've been alone my whole life. I've been an outcast my whole life. I've been judged my whole life. I have clients who are obese and judged me for being thin because I took care of myself. I want to be left alone, just like millions of other people want to be left alone, because I've chosen function. I've chosen being responsible. I've chosen being married and having sex with a condom because I couldn't take fucking birth control. My ex-husband fucking judged me for it. All because the sensation is better without it, without a condom. People are fucking weak. People are weak today. They are so weak. They would risk having a child all for the 5 minutes of having sex without a condom. That's how weak we've become. It's almost like becoming so desensitized. Like, you just need to have that ultimate immediate feeling. I mean, this is a whole other topic in itself. But I've broken free, and that's the future. And I've seen the future of health and wellness and all this, even bringing mindfulness can have a dark side, but bringing mindfulness into corporations to get people to actually relate to one another and stop being like computers where it's just like firework reactive things exploding in an office space, and just being a little bit mindful and seeing each other's perspectives to be diplomatic enough and use logic and reason to resolve issues. And then Amazon swoops in and completely, like a dark cloud, just washed all of that away and has promoted fear of losing your job. It's promoted a horrible work culture where you're just disposable. So then those people, I had those clients, those people that treated me like crap. So now is the time to stick to the roots. If you want to live 100% med-free life, you have to fight for it. You have to. You cannot cave in. It is not the future. The future has been organic, and it's been for a long time with alternative therapy and, some meditation. I don't want to get into all the yoga and meditation thing as the demonic stuff from a Christian point of view, because I do see it from both sides. But I do think if people are mentally out of their gourd, to do some form of meditation can help. But you can go too far down the rabbit hole of meditation where you become too self-absorbed. You become too into yourself where you just shut other people out. So thank you for listening to this. And if you've chosen a med-free life, or if you want help on getting off of this stuff, I can give you advice as best as I can within my scope of practice. I don't care. I don't care if it's free advice. I've been giving free advice out forever. The world is abundant enough that it'll always come back and pay otherwise. So thank you, and have a good day. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Bye-bye.